guys, welcome to Two Guys Talking Football. Here we are at
that's the second time you screwed this up.
What?
It's two fat guys talking football. And
That's true, and we have proof.
That's made no
That's
more
made proof
evident
today.
than our Monopoly game board here from the McDonald's
Live, remote location.
in Indio, California. We pulled off the side of the road, and
I'm gonna call this either the low light of my life or the highlight of my life. Recording a Two Fat Guys video at Indio.
For a little background on how we got to this point.
How do we get here, Sam?
Well, John missed his flight this morning.
Correct. 6:15 wake-up call. 6:15 p.m.
So I wake up.
That worked.
I wake up, look at my phone. There's 6 missed calls from one John.
How
Gold.
panicked?
So like.
And
You could set the phone was oozing panic.
And 2 texts.
And 2 texts, the latter of which said, "Wake up!" with like a billion exclamation
You
points.
got that. You heard that.
I heard.
I ended up having to get the Daily Bruin photographer's phone number via your friend Ryan Menezes. Typical, usually our Two Fat Guys talking football videographer and IT guy. And here we are now and pretty much it ended here.
So long story short, I picked John up in Phoenix. We drove to Indio, at which point we got the email.
Not India.
Indio, right. At which point we got an email about the players being suspended.
Yeah.
At which point we pulled over to a McDonald's, ate an inordinate amount of McDonald's.
Let's be honest here. We didn't pull over for the suspension.
Obviously.
We pulled over for the McDonald's.
Played some Monopoly. Didn't win.
Oh yes. By the way, if anyone has Boardwalk, I have Park Place.
Tradesies?
Trades. Or no, just split. We'll combine the money, and then we can just pay for a new UCLA football coach. I think UCLA might end up having to do that themselves. After a 48-12 loss at Arizona, Dan Guerrero told me in the locker room that they were not going to be making a change at midseason with Rick Neuheisel. He said he's just not that kind of guy to do that. And I think, part of that really has to do with the fact that Neuheisel is a great Bruin. He is a Rose Bowl winning walk-on quarterback, and I think there is a level of respect that you do give a coach like that, no matter how he's done. And with his record right now, he hasn't done very well. We know that.
Okay, John, are you, me, and the viewer in agreement that was the quote ugliest game in Neuheisel history? In Neuheisel UCLA history.
I mean, it was one of the ugliest games I've ever seen played. Period. It was
and I've seen a lot of ugly games.
It was the Cher version of the Mask version of ugly losses. It was Sloth from Goonies level of losses. It was
okay. So enough.
You get the point.
Enough of the hyperbole.
Yeah.
If that is in fact the case, something has to happen if I'm Dan Guerrero.
Now?
I have to fire Joe Tracy. I have to tell Neuheisel to fire Joe Tracy. Something. You have to make a move that shows that is not okay.
Well, what's not okay?
What's not okay is players taking swings at each other.
Yeah, and
at midfield.
Yeah, speaking of those suspensions, the Pac-12 ended up suspending 10 players, including 6 UCLA players for their parts in the brawl that happened with 4 seconds left as a streaker ran onto the field.
Dressed as a referee. Brilliant job.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that later. I'm a huge fan of that guy. At Arizona Stadium last night, and
including four of the 6 suspended players are UCLA receivers, which only leaves them with 4 scholarship receivers on their roster.
Yeah, so they're going to be going with Nelson Rosario, Josh Smith, Jerry Rice Jr., a former walk-on, and Devin Lucien, who's been redshirted.
If they burn his red shirt.
Yeah, and
they're going to have to.
That's kind of sad for that kid.
Terribly sad. Yeah. What was he doing? I didn't see him out on the field fighting.
Yeah, and my thing is, I don't know why he's been redshirting in the first place, but we can get into that. Sam, you call it an ugly loss. I think everyone can call it an ugly loss. Was it more than that? Was it a systemic loss? I guess my question is, do you believe that was indicative of where this program is right now, or do you think it was an aberration, a bad game against a bad team?
To me, when Streaker, whatever his name was, ran onto the field, Kevin Prince runs, in the camera shot, you see Kevin Prince running to something, and what we saw on the field was 2 sidelines clearing, punches being thrown, people being taken to the turf. That right there, to me, was a compilation of the Neuheisel messiness mounting and coming to it.
Yeah, it's one thing. Penalties is one thing. Drop passes is another thing. Poor throws is another thing. Those are, to me, they're inexcusable. But you can say those are football plays that momentary lack of focus.
And they were turning on each other, and not turning on each other, but
we'll get into that. Those are momentary lapses. For a team to not just get 6 guys involved in a fight is one thing. If it was 3 guys on each side, there's just not even punches thrown, but whatever, the yapping at each other and guys are shoving. That's one thing. When bench is clear, that's a whole nother thing. And I think one big factor that you kind of have to focus on is UCLA had 6 players suspended. Arizona only had 4. So clearly the Pac-12 is sending a message that UCLA was the instigator here.
Obviously.
In addition to those 4 receivers, Ricky Marbre, 1 game, Randall Carroll, 1 game, who am I forgetting here? Taylor Embry, 1 game, in addition to being ejected at halftime.
Shaq Evans,
1 game, and then Cassius Marsh, 2 games, and Alberto said a half game suspension for their roles in the
for the 2-point takedown.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that is really so surprising is it took a 42-7 deficit for UCLA to show some fight. I think you can really say that they look like they'd mailed it in. Even that was air mailed in, Pony Expressed in.
Let's be honest. They played
2 seconds into the game.
They played a little better in the second half. I don't know if you want to say that was because of the brawl or whatever, but
no, it was because Arizona called off the dogs.
No one was watching. Not even Arizona's players were watching.
Yeah.
I mean, the game was out of hand by 4 minutes into the game.
And Arizona had taken control so early, and it wasn't even just taking control. They score almost immediately on their first drive with just complete and utter ease. Then UCLA comes, and then on a crucial 3rd down, overthrow by Kevin Prince.
Which would have been a touchdown.
Yeah, would have been to Josh Smith.
Yeah.
Arizona next time down, touchdown.
Arizona the next 4 times down.
Correct.
After that
So
touchdown.
out of nowhere, I mean, this wasn't just a.
It wasn't the Stanford game where you could punt to Taylor Embry muffing this punt lost us the game, which is what a lot of them said.
Which I think was overblown, but go on.
The fact that they lost the coin toss lost them the game.
Yeah. And which we're going to get into later, the whole idea of, is the pistol offense a good thing for UCLA? Both of us don't think so. We'll get into that later. But Sam, I want to talk about, we said that this was a game going into this, a crucial must-win game. A game that UCLA didn't just need to win, but needed, not forget win convincingly, any of that kind of stuff, because I do think Arizona was a good team. I projected them pretty high in the Pac-12. They stumbled. They lost 10 straight games to FBS opponents. They hadn't had a lead in 320 minutes since Game 1 against Northern Arizona. And here comes UCLA, arguably fighting for their head coach's livelihood. And they left...
Literally fighting.
They left a bigger stink bomb than I've ever seen a team leave in a game that, against a 1-5 opponent.
It's one thing for that to happen last year when, what were they, 3-6 or something?
Oh, okay.
Going into some game. I don't even remember that they lost big.
Way to be accurate.
I'm just saying, it's one thing for that to happen last year when
the season's over.
Everyone was kind of down.
Yeah. This is when they should be blossoming.
And they were all saying before the game, we're 2-1. We're in the race. If anything took them out of the race, that was it last night.
I don't even know if there is a race at this point.
Yeah.